Hi, so I'm here with Cameron. I'm Bruce Firestone, founder of the Ottawa Senators. Cameron, introduce yourself.
I'm Cameron Chaddad. I'm a third-year journalism student at Carleton University, and I also have my own sports blog called 613 Sports. And I'm just really happy to be here. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here, and I know you're doing a report. And where will you publish it?
So as of right now, the story is for a class assignment, but once it is done, if it is done well enough, I'd like to try and publish it in somewhere like the Ottawa Citizen, but if not, somewhere like Capital Current at Carleton as well.
That's great, and you can publish it on your blog as well, right?
For sure, for sure.
All right. So when you do publish it on your blog or in the Ottawa Citizen or whatever, when there's a link, send it to me, and I'm going to upload this to YouTube so people can watch it, and I'll add the link to your story as well. I'll put it on my channel.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So you had a few questions about the Ottawa Senators.
For sure. So I guess first of all, I just wanted to ask you, I've watched some videos and stuff in the past, and
Yeah.
having dealt with legal issues building an arena before, like when you went through quite a bit of a hassle, they're trying to build the arena in Canada now. What sort of challenges stand in the way facing the Senators right now moving downtown? And can you sort of speak to that with your personal experience?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is not the first time, we thought of moving the Senators downtown. In fact, we did play at the Ottawa Civic Center at Lansdowne Park for, I think, the first 3.5 years before the new building in Canada was available. And even before that, Cameron, we looked at a bunch of alternative sites. And one of them was Lansdowne Park. The other was LeBreton Flats, which is downtown. We looked at an East End site off of Highway 174. We looked at a Gatineau site. It was called Hull back then. Today it's Gatineau. And this is where the Casino de Lac Limi is. We looked at that site. We looked at a site on Bank Street, south of the city, which was South Keys. And out of all of those sites, to be honest with you, I liked LeBreton Flats the best, right downtown, right on the river, etc. So I went to see the chair of the NCC, and I asked her back, this would have been the 90s, early 90s, so a long time ago now. I asked her if her name was Jean Piggott. I asked Ms. Piggott if we could build what we called the Palladium, is now the Canadian Tire Center at LeBreton Flats. And she said to me, Bruce, do you want the private answer or the public answer? And I said, Jean, are they different? She says, they are. I said, well, what's the private answer? And she said, the answer is no. And she said it's no for a number of reasons, but the main reason was she and the NCC, the National Capital Commission, had a 150-year plan for LeBreton Flats. It was to build new museums like the War Museum, maybe a new Supreme Court of Canada building at some point. So major institutions. And she said to me, Bruce, I'm sure you're going to build a very nice rink, but to the NCC, it's just a rink. So the answer is no. But if you ask me publicly, we don't like to say no to Canadians. Their nickname, by the way, the NCC's nickname is the No Commitment Club. And so they don't like to say no. So she said, publicly, we'll say this. We'll say, look, that's a very interesting question. We'll study it. And Bruce, we'll study it until one of two things happens. Either you give up and go away or you die, whichever comes first. And frankly, we don't care. So I took that as a big time no. The other a site that we looked at was Lansdowne Park, which is a very central site as well. But both LeBreton Flats and Lansdowne Park at that time had two major drawbacks. You look at the Bell Center in Montreal, it's right downtown. You look at, what do they call it now? Scotiabank Arena, I think in Toronto, right? It was the Air Canada Centre, now Scotiabank Arena, right downtown. But Toronto has a subway, and Montreal has the metro, and those facilities are able to, they're able to accommodate about 20 to 30,000 people an hour. Whereas back then, we only had OC Transpo, which is a bus system, and they could only move about 3,000 or 4,000 people an hour. So if you have 20,000 people in a building and you have to exit them either on Bank Street, where you have Lansdowne Park, or Scott Street, where you have LeBreton Flats, how long does it take to empty 20,000 people at 3,500 people an hour? Like a long time. 6 hours, probably a little less than that, maybe 5 hours. Well, you'd only ever have one sellout. So we built the building in Canada. It's on a major highway, which we call the Queensway. It's got 7,000 vehicle parking lot. It's got all kinds of ingress and egress. So we could probably exit everybody, mostly by car, unfortunately, and by bus, in about an hour and 15 minutes. So really, that's why we built it out there. The other factor that we ran into, as you know, Cameron, is there's a lot of people in Ottawa who don't like new development. And you know, the impolite way of referring to these people is NIMBY. I don't know if you know what that stands for.
I do not know, actually.
NIMBY, all capitalized, NIMBY. It stands for not in my backyard. So people will tell you, oh, Cameron, that's a really great idea, just not here. Anywhere but here, not in our, because people don't like change, they don't like traffic, and basically people don't like change very much. So there is, wherever you build a major community facility today, it doesn't matter whether it's Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, San Francisco, Boston, Austin, LA, there's a lot of people who will object. So it takes quite a while to get any project approved. So we did manage it in Canada, but it wasn't easy.
For sure. So then I guess kind of from there, you know the city pretty well and the market fairly well. Do you think that Ottawa and the Sens can succeed in Ottawa going forward without an arena downtown?
Well, there was a very good news story, a few years ago now, that National Capital Commission had a change of heart. And they look at an arena today as an animation, not Disney animation, but as a way to add more life to a property, and it's a very strategic and important property. And so today the NCC, after 25 to 30 years, has had a change of heart, and they would, in fact, like to see an arena down there to bring more life and more activity downtown and to their site, which is, quite a big site. I think it's 50 or 60 acres in total. So the good news story was that the Senators, together with their local partners, were favored to develop the entire site, Le Breton Flats. After asking 30 years ago and getting a no, 30 years later they changed their mind. But there was a falling out, as you know, it's part of the public record, between the partners, and there's some litigation going on. So in terms of I talked about NIMBYs, overcoming some local opposition can often be difficult. But then when partners start to litigate with each other, that's a real strong impediment. If you want your brother or your sister to hate you forever, sue them. And I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. So all kidding aside, I think there are some very, very tough hurdles, and the National Capital Commission has had to move on. So they have a new plan to develop the Le Breton Flats. I'm still not sure it's a very good plan, but it's a plan, and there is still an arena site permitted, that the NCC has set aside for the arena. But what has gone now, because of the falling out between the partners, I think, what has gone now is the ability not just to put an arena down there, but to be responsible for the other development. Because part of the way that you can pay for an arena is what we did. You buy 600 acres of land, which we did in Canada, but you only need 100 acres of it. It means the other 100 acres, the other 500 acres, can be developed, and hopefully you could maybe make some money on that. So that right has gone away now. And so I think the franchise, the Ottawa Senators franchise, together with the right to go downtown, together with the right to develop the downtown lands around it, is more valuable than what we have today, which is just an arena in Canada, which is in the west end of Ottawa, without the right to go downtown and develop those lands. So I think the franchise value is probably lower today than it would have been just 3 or 4 years ago.
Definitely. And then I want to pivot back a little bit, something you said a little bit earlier as well. You talked about Montreal and Toronto, and they have like large scale people movers. How would that like help the Senators if we had something that connects to the arena finally? And how big of an issue is this for the team?
Well, it is a big issue. I still get emails about the fact that the building is in Canada, not downtown. I still get people criticizing me for that, but I understand it. I wanted to put it downtown, but the fact is, you can't build on somebody else's land without their permission, right? So you wouldn't really want to own a lot, and then I build a house on it for me and my family on your lot without paying you for it. You would probably object to that. So the National Capital Commission, turned us down 30 years ago, and that was that. But realistically, if you think about it, let's say you're coming from the east end of Ottawa, say from Orleans, and you're driving downtown. You know, first of all, there won't be a whole lot of parking, whether it's Lansdowne Park or it's LeBreton Flats. There won't be a lot of public parking there, so you'll have to hunt for a parking space if you come by car. If you come by light rail, because Ottawa's now putting in a light rail system, it'll be much better. When Montreal had the Expos, you know, the old baseball team, if you know what I'm talking about, Cameron.
Sure.
Yeah, so when the Montreal had the Expos, I used to go with my friends to watch a baseball game, and we would drive from Ottawa to Montreal, but we would park downtown Montreal, and we would have dinner there, and or lunch, or kind of some mixture of that, and then we would take the metro to the Big O. So I really think, and I think Mayor Watson, our current mayor, is right. You cannot have a G7 capital, Ottawa is a G7 capital, without having a big time people mover. You need that. You need light rail. And so one day, I hope that light rail will connect Orleans to downtown, to Canada, to Barrhaven, and that we will be able to move more people more easily without necessarily having to rely on the private automobile. I lived in Australia for many years, and I worked in Sydney. And I would never think of taking my car across Sydney. Sydney doesn't have really any freeways. They don't have a Queensway, you know, or anything like that, at least not when I lived there. And so, you know, I would take the bus, or I would take their excellent train system, and you can move pretty much anywhere in Sydney that way. So I think that we're headed in the right direction. So if the Sens have to stay in Canada for the next generation, connecting Canada and eventually, I hope, what is the Palladium site, you know, Canadian Tire Center, to the light rail will happen, and that would really make a difference. So you could get on the train in Barrhaven, in downtown, in Orleans, and you could, you know, you could be there in very quick order. That's the way to do it.
For sure. And then I also wanted to ask a little bit more from a hockey perspective. You know, you saw firsthand when you guys are trying to make the bid for the team, and you sold so much of like your pre-sale for season tickets and that kind of thing right away. The excitement of this.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Do you think that excitement will always be with the fans, or is there a certain like breaking point? What are your thoughts about that and the fan base here in Ottawa?
Well, you know, there's no doubt that people in Canada, and certainly people in Ottawa and Gatineau and this area, Eastern Ontario and West Quebec, love hockey. There's no doubt about it. You know, we've got the Gatineau Olympique, we've got the Ottawa 67s, we've got the Ottawa Senators, and for many, many years, even though the arena is in Canada, you know, you could have an Olympique game, you could have a 67s game and a Sens game all on the same day. They'd all be sold out. So that love affair has cooled a little bit. I'm not telling you anything you couldn't figure out for yourself and probably already have. That love affair has cooled. When I was a bit younger, my kids were a bit younger. I have 5 kids, Cameron. You know, when I would go to a school, local school, a public school or high school, and give a talk, you know, there'd be 500 kids in there, and 497 of them would have, you know, a Sens hat or a Sens jersey or something. Today, not maybe quite so much. You know, you still see Montreal Canadiens fans and Maple Leaf fans and some Sens fans. You see a lot of Raptors fans now. Not so much the Senators. They've fallen off the map a little bit. And part of the cooling of that love affair, I think, is the fact that you know, obviously the team on the ice is not performing as well as I think everybody hoped it would. And the other factor is performance by itself is not enough.
For sure.
You know, back in the day when I was learning how to run an NHL team, I had a chance to get to know Bill Wirtz. He owned the Chicago Blackhawks. He's now passed away. But Bill told me the most important thing for an NHL owner to do is to make sure his building is full of rabid fans. If you have great fans in the building, sponsors will want to associate themselves with you. You know, corporations will want to put their name on your building. Everything comes from the fans. So I really believe that. When that love affair cools, it isn't just good enough to win, because I don't care how good your team is. There are 31 NHL teams, soon to be 32. Only one of them wins the Stanley Cup a year. The other 31 out of 32 are losers, right? Just by definition. And almost nobody remembers who finished second, you know, whether or who won this series or that series. You win the Stanley Cup, they will remember that for a long time, but nobody really remembers the runner-up or the next to the runner-up. So, that love affair starts from the top. That's why the National Football League for decades insisted that NFL franchises were owned by individuals, not companies. They wanted that person to own a National Football League team, and hopefully that person was living in that city.
For sure.
Because every single day that you go into that building, whether it's an arena or a stadium, etc., the owner's heartbeat is beating, and he or she is showing that they care about the team. They're showing that to their players, their coaches, their trainers, their managers, their ticket staff, the hot dog vendors, to the sponsors. And, we in Ottawa, we have an owner who doesn't live here. And I've been told he can only work 15 days in Canada a year because of tax purposes or tax reasons. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's what I've been told. And it's hard to run anything. I couldn't run a shoe store showing up 15 days a year. It would be difficult. So that is a real conundrum. Mike Ilitch was the owner of the Detroit Red Wings for many years. I knew him. And when he passed away, his players and trainers and coaches and fans, sponsors, everybody mourned his passing. He was a very, very important and beloved individual in that city. And that relationship's important. So somehow I think that relationship between the current owner and the city and its fans and its corporate sponsorship base has to be rekindled. How you do that, I'm not sure.
Definitely. So then I guess from there, kind of it goes more of like a long-term perspective. I guess I want your personal opinion. Where do you see the future of this team headed, and what do you like both on and off the ice?
Well, I don't want to be critical of existing management, but I can tell you, and I can say some very positive things. I think their drafting record has been very good. So their amateur scouting, I think, is great. I mean, Tim Stuzel's a heck of a player. I think you'd agree. And Brady Tkachuk is not too bad either. So I think their pro scouting and their amateur scouting and their amateur drafting has been pretty good. But maybe where the team could improve a little bit would be in their pro scouting and their trades. They traded away the player that I thought was going to be the next captain of the Sens, Mark Stone, and didn't get a whole lot back for him. And it's those kinds of trades that are really hurt you. You do a great job back in the day drafting Daniel Alfredson. I think in the 6th round, he becomes your captain and an amazing leader. And you do a great job selecting Mark Stone. But if they don't stay with your team, that really, really negatively impacts the value of the team and the love affair that I was talking about between the fans and the team. They relate, they relate to the players, right? 50% of the value of a National Hockey League franchise is in their player contracts. 50%. So if an NHL franchise, expansion franchise today is worth $650 million US dollars. We paid 50 million, but today it's 650. Half of that value is in their player contracts, which tells me that the Sens, I think, need to do a better job keeping their players, and they need to do a better job on their pro scouting. So if they do make trades, they get real value in return. Having said that, Sam Pollock, who was the genius behind the Montreal Canadiens dynasty, I think of the 1970s, told me, Bruce, if there's 7 players being traded, 4 going this way and 3 going this way, and you look at that trade and you have no idea who won the trade, you look for the single best player amongst those 7 players who've moved. Whoever got that player won the trade. That's it. That's all you need to know about trading. And so pro scouting and trades, if you're going to do that, you better be good at it.
For sure. And that's all the questions I had prepared for. I also just wanted to ask if there's anything that I might have missed you think is important to add as well.
Well, I do think there's one other aspect that I should mention. People have been asking me because the team is not quite at the level of public affection as it used to be. What is the future of the team? Is it going to stay in Ottawa? And I point to the fact that the commissioner, Gary Bettman, as long as he is commissioner, he is dead set against moving franchises, which I agree with. I never felt that I owned the Ottawa Senators. I didn't really own them. I held them in trust for the fan base. Okay? And what I mean by that is it's like if you own a great Grand Master, one of these paintings that go for $100 million or more, I tell, because I have a few friends who own paintings like that, it's amazing. And you look at a Monet or whatever hanging on somebody's wall, that's pretty cool. But I tell them, you don't actually own that. And they go, what? No, you don't actually own that. One day your heirs or your heirs to your heirs will give that to a major or sell it to a major museum. It's going to end up in a major museum. You really can't own, imagine somebody owning the Mona Lisa, I mean, really. You can't really own these things. This is a collective cultural heritage. And I know it sounds a little overwrought to compare, Sens franchise or any sports franchise to these great works of art, but you do hold them in trust for your fans. And I think Gary Bettman, the commissioner, does share that. There were a lot of people who thought the Arizona Coyotes should have been moved. It was a heck of a struggle, right, to light the fire in that fan base. But Gary worked really, really hard. And when the Sens went bankrupt in the mid-2000s, Gary stepped in again. He wants, Canada's capital city to have an NHL franchise. So if the situation gets any worse, and I hope it doesn't, but if it does, I suspect the commissioner will go to work again. As long as Gary is the commissioner, he's not going to grant permission for franchises to move. He's not going to put them on roller skates.
For sure. Well, definitely. I think that's all the questions I had for you, Bruce. I really appreciate taking the time to talk to me. Thank you so much.
Well, I certainly enjoyed it, and I'm going to stop the recording now. And I really enjoyed the camera, and I look forward to reading your story.